My name is Cody Cole. I am one of the radiation and nuclear specialists here at Berkeley Nucleonics, and I'm joined by the senior applications manager for the nuclear equipment, Mark Slattery, who is over here. And this is going to be a presentation on our upgraded unit, the SAM 940 Plus, a long-awaited iteration on our SAM 940 unit that started our foray into RID detection, along with the SAM 935. A little bit of a braggadocious explanation of Berkeley Nucleonics beforehand. We have been in testing and measurement for over 50 years. We first got our start with analog pulsars, and we have zigged and zagged into RF and microwave equipment and testing and measurement, and also our series of radiation detection and identification units, such as our SAM3 series here. We're a pretty small company, and we really like the fact that we're able to work individually with requesters and customers on specific needs. And a lot of that collaborative thought process went into the developments in the SAM 940 Plus that we're going to be presenting today. But with that, before we can visit that unit, we're going to go ahead and start with the past, and Mark Slattery is going to take it away.
Thank you very much, Cody. Let's see. Again, as a foundation for this webinar, it's mostly to welcome customers who have used the SAM 940 for so very long, and are thinking of moving up into a different RID for their purposes. We, during the time of the SAM 940, which was a tremendous hardworking unit for us, very reliable. We've done the same thing with newer units, but we've also listened to some of the changes and requests that you have asked for. We've incorporated some things like putting the detector inside of the handle, and we'll show you these things as they come along. But those of you who remember the SAM 940, or perhaps still using it, it is isotope identifier, a RID, radioisotope identifier. The scintillator types that it uses is sodium iodide and cerium bromide. We did offer, and we probably still could offer, lanthanum bromide, but we really find that the cerium bromide is as good as the lanthanum bromide, in my opinion, and I'm sticking to it. Sodium iodide and 2-inch and 3-inch sizes. Let's see what else we've got here. It stored the information on a compact flash, and if you wanted to get the information from the compact flash or from the SAM to a PC, you had to turn off the SAM, remove the compact flash, attach to the PC. Throughout today, you'll notice that the getting the SAM and the PC to link together has become a much easier process with the SAM 940 Plus. I think that's, I don't know what else to talk about the SAM 940 Plus or the 940.
Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, but this is the specific model, the SAM 940, that in 2011 we provided it to responders in Fukushima, correct?
Oh, absolutely, yes. And yeah. I was fortunate to go to Tokyo and then train a great many of the people to use it, train them how to operate a SAM 940. It's like I said, you may hear me say the word workhorse innumerable times today. It is a hardworking, reliable device, and it's been sort of our go-to standard. We have progressed beyond. We have the SAM3 series. For those of you who may already know about the SAM 950 or the backpack SAM RD 120 backpack. So these are also evolutionary from things we learned with the SAM 940. But getting it more to a compact, small, lightweight, easy to use format is foremost for us, and hence the SAM 940 Plus, particularly for people that are already comfortable with the SAM 940.
And speaking of people who are comfortable with the unit, we actually have a poll question here asking, do you guys use the SAM 940? Now, this could be in any capacity. It could be if you have one that you take out every year to calibrate. It could be one that you're still using a lot in your applications. Or if you just happen to, pick it up at a, response training, then we would definitely like to know. We find that a lot of our classic units like these, just because we've been providing them for so long, they have a tendency to pop up in some very interesting places.
Let's see. I'm just noticing we have a question already. Is the SAM 940 probe mounted versus the probe on the new model being handheld? If you look at the picture of the SAM 940, which we had up a little while ago, the SAM 940 probe was mounted on plastic handle and or plastic brackets, and on top of that was a handle with the SAM 940, the interface control device. This SAM 940, or the 940 Plus, we've put the detector inside. The question is, are any of these models able to connect data to the rad responder? Leonard, a very good question. We will cover that later. The quick answer is yes. We'll maybe perhaps go into a little more detail later on.
All right. And I think we've had the poll question up just long enough, and we're going to go ahead and review the results there. Just going to reference our technical aids so that we can get those.
Yeah, I don't think I have access to the.
All right. Oh, I have it, Mark, and the results are in. It looks like we've got 9 SAM 940 users and 23 people who have not used the SAM
Really?
940.
Okay. Well, that's helpful to know. Therefore, I will not be referring as much perhaps to the SAM 940, but for you folks who do use the SAM 940, I'll try to parallel certain features and so forth all along the way. And to you folks that do use the SAM 940, thank you.
All right, excellent. And let's go ahead and to kind of kick off the SAM 940 Plus unveil, keep that previous image of the SAM 940 in your mind as you watch this introductory video that we produced for the unit. Might be a little bit dorky to admit, but very proud of that video. Love watching it every time. But yeah, Mark, you're muted. There you go.
I'm back on. Yeah, I still get chills when I watch the video. I hope you all enjoyed it. Give you an overview of the types of applications, the ways that it can be used in the field, the reason why it is a portable device, giving you virtually the abilities of a small spectroscopic laboratory, all contained in a handheld device. That's really what the SAM 940 and the 940 Plus and all of our SAMs have been about, to give you that ability.
For sure. And there's so many aspects to this unit to discuss. 2.5-minute video is a great introduction, but we wouldn't be here if that was all the information we could provide. So we're going to go ahead and transition here into the specific components of this unit.
Okay. Rather than do a show and tell, I mean, obviously, we can show you the SAM itself. It's a very nice device, very good looking device. We have, let's see if I can you blow that up a little bit? I'm trying to remember the numbers here. Perfect. So yes, of course, the detector is the star of the show. That is inside the handle. The scintillator is placed up near the front window. We have still an LCD display similar to the SAM 940. It is not touch LCD display. It is strictly a push button operated device, just like the SAM 940. Neutron detection is optional, but it certainly is available. Replaceable battery pack. The battery packs are inside the device and look kind of like this here. And they go in and out just that easy. Let's see, AA power. I don't have one here, but imagine if you will, and a hold on. There we go. Put some AA batteries in here and insert that into the handle of the SAM 940 Plus. Universal adapters. Yes, our charger has different adaptations in case you find yourself performing your missions in locations that don't have standard United States 2-prong 110 volt. A belt holster is included. Very helpful when you need both hands to do certain operations. It has a camera in front. And again, as they said in the video you saw, you can take a picture, for instance, in live time of the environment of the object that you've just finished capturing a spectra of. And you have a vehicle battery charger available as well, of course. Bluetooth earphones in case it's easier for you to listen to alarm messages and so forth with the earphones. Let's see what else we got, and that's pretty much it for the features. Cody, do you think I've left out anything that's critical?
It's not necessarily critical, but with the Bluetooth earphones, a potential concern might be the type of alarm that's blaring in your ear, whether it's distracting or potentially harmful, because these things, they have blaring alarms. There is the opportunity to change the ringtone in the setting. There's different alarm types that you can set. You can also set it to vibrate only. So yeah, definitely a potential concern for anybody who doesn't want bleeding ears. Lots of interesting component control in this instrument.
Yeah, we don't like the bleeding ears.
But let's see what's in the box. Right?
Well, let's go ahead and move on. What comes with the SAM 940 Plus, we've kind of discussed already the items that were numbered in the previous slide, but it comes in a foam filled hard case, Pelican style case, and very heavy duty, rugged. Take it out in the field. All of the items that we've just described to you are contained inside the case. And let's see, is there anything? I'm looking over here to just see if there's anything we've left off. I think we've covered all the individual items. I don't know if there's any details, unless Cody, do you think there's a detail?
I think the strong suit is that there aren't any details. Everything you need to operate this unit and its variety of operating conditions is contained within this box. That way, if you have the case, you have every tool you need to activate and operate the SAM 940 Plus. And speaking of that, we're getting on to the features here, Mark.
Okay. Let's see. Obviously, the SAM 940 Plus is a gamma detector. It does not, I just said it does not gamma, alpha, and beta energies, but it can. We'll discuss that in a little bit. But neutron capability can also be had inside of the SAM device. The energy range is pretty typical for most devices, is from 20 keV to 3 MeV is what we've traditionally had. But with the particularly with some of the harder high resolution scintillators, we are able to push that range up around 10 MeV. So we're getting into the neutron range with that. Perfect for if you need a particle or a handheld device for high energy physics. For the most part, I think most of the handheld users will probably be down more in the normal range, but the higher range is available if you need it. We have a reach back feature. This is something that is unique, or I think we're very proud of. The ability to take a capture, an acquisition that you've just made, and send it in real time, immediately after you've captured it. You can send it back to a email address that you've pre-programmed into the SAM 940 Plus, and you can also send it to Rad Responder. So if you have a Rad Responder account, if you've already installed your account information into the memory of the SAM 940 Plus, you can also send the information to Rad Responder. Let's see, for the gamma, sodium iodide is the basic, really can do it all, the all-around champ. Sodium iodide at 2 inches and maybe even 1.5 inches. Resolution is about 7% at 662 keV. We also have available click. And, I was going to make a promise to myself to memorize what each of this stand for. But the lithium, the L is for lithium. The Y is for ytterbium or yttrium, or one of those Ys. It is a dual purpose. It can detect neutrons. It can also detect gamma. It's very hard, very fast, and got a resolution more like in the 5% range, maybe even into the 4% range. Also CLLBC, which is it's cesium, lithium, lanthanum bromochloride. So again, it is also a high resolution detector for gamma, and the lithium enables it to perform also as a neutron detector in one device. The library categories and classifications, of course, we're compliant with the ANSI standards, and so we have a breadth of different classifications in the default library. If you are going to perform your operations in an environment where you're less likely to need to identify medical isotopes or norm background isotopes, you can switch it to industrial library, specializing in industrial. Or if you are in a medical environment, change it to medical classifications. If you're out doing a lot of surveying in the field, or particularly if you're looking for enhanced normally occurring radioactive materials, if you're looking for enhanced, then you'd be probably using the norm library as your main focus. To not belabor that, Cody, can you think of anything else that we want to discuss?
Besides a quick mention that Alan went ahead and put the long name of Click into the chat. I am not too good at reading chemical compositions, so if anybody knows how to read that out, feel free. But yeah, no, very good overview of all the features, and to kind of feed into that, we have the physical specs of the unit.
Okay, and as you can see, it's close to 10 inches in length. The largest dimensions will be here in the head, essentially a 4x4 type. It's really quite small, easy to hold in your hand. It's quite light. The weight is 2.5 pounds. That's it. That's all. 1.5 kilos, or 1.2 kilos. The batteries are replaceable. The batteries, when fully charged, will give you about 3 to 4 hours of continuous use. At that point, you can turn the device off quickly, swap in a new battery, and resume. We also have available battery packs that if things are critical, rather than turn off the SAM and replace the battery in here, take the battery pack and plug it directly into the USB cable here in the front. And you'll get extra time. You'll even see the indicator that, in fact, you are charging and operating the SAM 940 Plus with an external supply. So in times of need, that is available. And it doesn't take very long to charge the batteries. We do provide it with a very fast USB charger. Operating temperatures, pretty much the normal, from minus, let's see, we got 20 to 50. Okay, so -4 Fahrenheit to 122 Fahrenheit. It's pretty standard operating range. The stabilization and auto calibration is performed without any onboard sources. So the device is using a enhanced program for identifying or for seeking out potassium 40 that is already in the environment, and really potassium 40 is around us all of the time. It's an easy one to find and distinctive. And so by searching in that area, it can identify the energy, enhance that signal, and perform its calibration of the scale on that SAM on the K40. So it is using K40, but it's not internal. Stabilization, let's see, we talked about that. And I, again, wanted to mention that is useful. That's also used in the calibration. If you're not familiar with RIDS, why do we want, what's important about stabilization? If you're operating in that range that we're talking about, say, the 20 degrees or the -4 up to 122 degrees Fahrenheit, the temperature eventually can start to affect the analog device, which is the main device in here. The tube, the photo multiplier, is an analog device. It is greatly affected by time and temperature. And so the graph, your energy calibrations, may start to drift a little bit one way or the other. By virtue of this stabilization running in the background and constantly using K40 as its reference, we can make sure that as the temperatures change, the SAM is keeping up with that change and automatically adjusting and keeping the device in calibration. Is that pretty well covered, that one, Cody? How do you think?
One thing I kind of want to pick out particularly on this slide is the external detectors. Now, with our SAM iterations, yeah, we've been internalizing the detector now into the units, like with the SAM 950, because, you know, when you ruggedize it like this, it protects the detector when you're out in the field. But as Mark, you could probably better describe, there are medical applications or nuclear physics applications where the end users are preferring that the detector is external, which is something the SAM 940 had.
There's a couple of, thank you, Cody, for bringing that up. There's a couple of situations where maybe that is helpful. With the SAM 940, you could separate the hand held control portion from the brackets, and with a long cable, be able to perform your searching while you're monitoring the screen. And that's been very helpful, very useful function for a lot of, say, first responders who are having to go in and search locations for radiation sources. And for that reason, you can connect an external detector to the device. The SAM will detect that and put you in touch with the external device. It will no longer read the internal device, and you know that what you're reading on the screen is the detector that you're moving about. You can also use a pancake probe if you know that you're going to be, or you're wanting to know if the energy that you're seeing is a beta energy or an alpha energy. This is helpful because some isotopes are not very good gamma detectors, but they will emit a lot of beta. And the beta will sometimes show like just sort of a broad hump in the continuum of the spectrum. With the beta detection, you can actually get counts. Same with the alphas.
Yep, definitely incredible feature. I mean, the potential is very high with that external detector, especially with the fact that it feeds into the software that's on the unit, making it capable of readout in specific functions. Speaking of features, by the way, Mark, we're going to get into some of the more software-sided things. If you'd like to take it away.
Well, thank you very much. Okay. Let's see. The Peakabout 4 is the operating system. It's quite a large jump from the SAM Eagle firmware that was operated with the regular standard 940. It's hard to enumerate all of the advancements and so forth. I think it'll become obvious to 940 users what a lot of the new stuff is. Auto calibration, of course, that's always been a feature. Same with the SAM 940 and the 940 Plus. The 940 Plus can do it without the potassium chloride contained in the ring on the detector. Reliable background measurement. Well, of course, that's necessary, whatever RID you're doing. You need the background reference because you are surrounded by radiation no matter where you are. There's always some. And the idea is let's find out what we can expect in the area where we are, and sort of capture that. It's like almost like taking a picture of it and storing it in your memory. And then from that point on, when you're out and about, every second, the device is looking at the radiation levels, comparing it to the background, scanning again, comparing it to the background, and it updates this every second. So that is why it's very important. I may forget to mention it later, or I may mention it too many times, but when you're turning on the SAM, it will perform auto calibration. When auto calibration is complete, you'll likely want to perform a background reference capture. In these instances, you don't want to be in the presence of radiation sources. You don't want any check sources or test sources that you have to be in the region. Please make sure that you are in a fairly benign environment before you turn it on and perform that background. Once it's done, stabilization takes care of that after that point. Manual ID, of course, is all the purpose behind all of this. Not only will you be able to detect, we'll show this more so, I think, during there'll be a live demo section towards the end of this. And manual identification, of course, with that event that you capture. We'll show you features like camera to include and attach to the event, and that will stay with that file. And of course, you can send that event via reachback or rad responder. If you must be in a Wi-Fi enabled area. If you don't have local Wi-Fi that you can use, you can say maybe use your personal phone as a Wi-Fi hotspot and use that as your Wi-Fi link for the linking the reachback and rad responder features for the SAM. What else we got here? So those, I think, are some of the more unique features. 940 users will know that, that's new stuff. And then for those of you which are new users, I hope that covers it for you. Anything that you'd like to add to that?
I think that was a stellar coverage. Actually, if I may, I would just like to preempt the next slide that we're going to be showing. If I may. It is going to be of the main user screens for the SAM 940 Plus compared to the SAM 940 users who are with us. It is a huge jump. To the SAM 950 users, it might look familiar, but throughout the presentation, when opportunities arise, we're going to be getting into some of the details about how we're iterating on this Peakabout software to make it as convenient to use as possible. But, with my spiel out of the way, we can go ahead and transition over. And Mark, if you may.
Okay. Thank you. One of the first things that you'll notice, particularly from the SAM 940, is An important number was the dose rate. Another important number was the counts per second. And this used to be confined to a fairly small area in the upper right corner of the SAM 940. It is front and center now with the 940 Plus. I'd say these are useful things to know. Instead of the speedometer that we now have a gauge that when we're not in an alarm is in a white highlight. If we get into an alarm, it will turn red. Let's see. Also, now with the SAM 940, we did introduce the move forward, move away, and ID, or perform ID instructions. I want to just mention that this feature, this rangefinder, is also included with visual icons as well with the SAM 940 Plus. It's really to help you get the best statistics. If it's telling you to move forward, it says, okay, I think maybe I got something here, but I'd really like to have a higher count rate. So keep getting closer. When you're in a range of about 2,000 to 3,000 counts per second, it should change and tell you that you're in range. My favorite sweet spot is about that 2,000, 3,000, but 5,000, 8,000, those are all good ranges with which to perform your measurements. My feeling is if you can perform the measurement with lesser amount of counts, why not move back a little bit and perform your measurements there? Let's see what else. Oh, and if you've gotten above 10,000 counts per second, it will tell you, hey, back it up a little bit. You'll get better statistics if we can get that count rate down. If you get to a point where you're dangerously close, and by default, we define this as 10 microrem per hour. 10 millirem? It might be 10 millirem per second. I'm really sorry that I can't pull that one up from memory, but it's the IAEA standard. When you've got into that health zone, the unhealthy zone, an entirely different alarm shows on the screen, an entirely different alarm is sounded in the audio. You will know to get back. Fortunately, of course, those of you who know Newton's inverse square law, a lot of times you don't have to move very far to get to a very safe level. So that's pretty much it with the main screen. Again, we'll be showing you this in a live demo a little bit from now.
Yeah. And Mark will go ahead, and you've probably seen him hoisting the unit around. That will be powered on and ready, and you'll be able to see some of these effects in live action. I guess if I may, one thing I usually mention when training on the SAM 950 with the similar interface is that the arrows, those are two static markers. They either tell you to move forward or move back. They're not three-dimensional indicators that will rotate left or right towards the source. Directionality is, yeah, as Mark can definitely describe, it's a difficult game to play with radiation detection identification. But on this next slide here, along with some other neat bells and whistles, there's there's a new locator feature with directionality focused.
Thank you very much for bringing that up. Once you've performed auto calibration in background and you've turned on the main screen, well, by that time you're already probably doing your search, you're doing your monitoring, you're watching the screen. When you put yourself into that sweet spot range where it's good to take a measurement, the manual ID screen, well, we'll show that in the demo. Or actually, a neat feature. It looks like the SAM is not powered up right now, but that little orange LED tells you that the SAM really is awake. And it's not napping, it's not sleeping, it's just resting its eyes, as my grandma used to say. The fact is that even if the SAM is in this napping mode, it is still performing its job, and it will alarm, it will wake up, and it will tell you that, hey, yeah, I'm awake. Nope, I'm awake, and give you the help. Let's see, what else was I? Oh, okay. So you perform the background, perform manual ID, perform the background from the menu locator. Now we might be able. I don't have. I'm not able to use to really demonstrate that. I don't have a strong enough source available to really illustrate how effective that is. But we did include one of our original features for searching, and that is the Finder screen. It's always been very popular with the frontline folks. It's a histogram. It's showing you an average every second. I told you every second it measures the surroundings. It's giving you counts in the average count rate. And as you're searching in a first responder environment, you may find that you have to take your eyes off of the screen quite a bit, looking for beams that might fall, water that's dripping, or something even worse than water that's dripping, stepping over ladders, hoses, debris, and so forth. In that time, you can sometimes not see the numbers flicker. You may not see the gauge move, and then when you go back and look at the screen, you missed it. You didn't get it. With the Finder is the histogram, and the idea with the Finder is that if you took your eye off it for just a second and then look back on the screen and say, hey, well, something was there. I missed that. Hold on. Let me just step back a few seconds where I was just a few seconds ago and see if I can get that thing to raise up again and again. You'll be looking to see if you can get that into the range where, hey, I think maybe I should get into the nice range of get as close as I can to that sweet spot and perform manual ID. That was always very popular feature with the SAM 940. We included also with the SAM 950 and all the SAM 3 products. And of course, it's also available for the SAM 940 Plus. Let's see. So I don't know what else to show really at this point. We will be doing more of sort of a live demo in a little bit from now. So the, oh, yes. Okay. Remember,
It's working.
It's working. I'm glad it works. Let's see what else. Manual ID. I guess we can quickly perform one here, just to give you an idea. For those who knew operated the SAM 940, it had a unique display. What was called quadratic compression, and it was able to kind of even out the linear. The linear properties of the normal radiation spectrum. Low energy was typically very narrow and compressed to one end, and the higher energies can sometimes be quite broad and very difficult. And so the quadratic compression kind of evened it out and gave everybody an opportunity to be represented. I mention that because if we start to manual ID down here at the bottom, soft key begins your manual ID. And as with the SAM 940, we can get that ID within a second. It happens very quickly. And again, the high range is spread out, is compressed, and the low range is more spread out. It can also operate in the linear spectrum, which more traditional users who are familiar with radiation spectrum tend to like to use the linear, but we can also perform this with the quadratic compression as well. Might as well let this, you can, of course, set the time to increase or decrease. You can, while you're taking the acquisition, when you're finished, you will come to a event screen. It will tell you if there are nuclides, which nuclide you saw, if you can use the camera, which right now I'm taking a picture of my ceiling and all the desk here, and take a picture and store that with the file. Save, sure, why not? We'll save that too. The ceiling has obviously got cesium iodide in it. No, I'm sorry. Yes, cesium 137. Let's see, what else? And this is where you can perform reachback. If you're within Wi-Fi range, you can say, well, hey, I want to perform reachback. It says, okay, well, do you want to do that in rad responder? Or do you want to do reachback? And we can highlight one or the other. In this case, what have I got here? I've got the reachback. And if we go ahead and say, yeah, okay, and that's good to me. That's what I want to do. It will tell you that it's transmitting. It should tell you that you're transmitting. What I may have done this incorrectly. Let's see. So let's highlight, reach back. Okay. Oh, long press. Okay. It's transmitting. I forgot the long press to start the reach back. But it's transmitting, and it just sent the spectrum to the external. This maybe your command area has a email address associated with it, and you'll pre-program that as the default address for your reach back. Same thing for rad responder. You get the same choice. You can select rad responder, press OK, and it will perform the spectrum transmission. Kind of got ahead of what I expect to show in the live demo, but I think it was an opportunity, since we had the screen available to show you the activities and so forth. This was probably a good time to go ahead and mention it in case I forget later.
You could barely contain your excitement. Is a good yeah, no, I mean, that's a perfect coverage of some of the core functions on the unit. Don't think there's much else to really mention there. If we actually go one slide ahead here, we would see that the hands-on demonstration was just up ahead. Just to add a little bit, since I promised about some of the 940 plus iterations in terms of convenience, as Mark mentioned, there is now that sleep feature mode as well. Compared to some previous versions of the Peekabout software, there are now acknowledgement requirements for certain functions. For instance, when you do a background scan, it will require you to acknowledge that the scan is complete before moving on. And the reason for that is to create a less than one-to-one relationship between the active use of a responder and the active surveillance of the unit. That way the unit is always working even when you are, as Mark mentioned, traversing a difficult area or using another form of instrument that is important to that current response scenario. And it's conveniences like those that save time, that reduce exposure. I've worked a lot with user interfaces throughout my different jobs, but never has a user interface been more important than on the SAM 940 Plus or on a RID, where every little second saved is reducing overall exposure, keeping responders safer. Definitely a very exciting step forward. And it might seem small in the now, but as Mark demonstrated with all these different features and menus, it all adds up to something very great.
I'll tell you what I did not cover in this little flurry of activity that came along, and the basics. And I always promise to show the basics to people that are training or getting acquainted. And one of them is to make sure the device is turned on. So always remember to put the battery in, and always remember to lock the battery in place. And you turn the device on with this orange button on the side, press and hold it. And if it, press and hold that a little longer, the orange LED will tell you that you've engaged and that the power is on. It takes a little while for the screen to come up and boot up, but it will eventually. We try to let the user know that you were correct, you pressed the correct button. We're going through the process of booting up. The loading portion of Peak About 4 probably takes about 30 to 40 seconds. Hardly enough time to go grab coffee and donut, but if there are other things that you could be doing with those 40 seconds, I'm sure you'll talk myself into a corner. I have no idea what I'm talking about, but at the end of 40 seconds, it will begin the auto calibration. I had mentioned that begins automatically. Because it begins automatically, always make sure that sources are away or that you're not in a high activity zone. When the auto calibration is complete, and you go to you'll be on the main screen again, go ahead and go to the, go to our menu. Let's try that again. And that's the event log. Let's try that again. It's hard to, this is not the way I normally use it. Let's go with home again. There's our menu, and so we can go up, down, press down, for instance, to highlight the background selection. And, oh, look at that. I can see me. With that done, press OK, and this will begin your background acquisition. I mention that because these are the basics. When you have the SAMs, and probably just about any device, but I always press that in. Rule number 1, turn it on. Rule number 2, wait for auto calibration to complete. Rule number 3, please perform your background reference. If you've done all of these things in that order, you will be back onto your operational gauge screen and ready to monitor, ready to search, ready to capture events of detected activity. Get that. Oh, just finished. Oh, just finished the calibration. So, and then immediately again, takes you to it. I have 2 here because sometimes, if you've ever seen a cooking show where they're dicing everything, putting it in a pan, tell you this, and now we put it in the oven. It's like, are we going to wait 3 hours for that to cook? No, they go to commercial, they come back, and hey, pulling out of the oven, oh, here's the fully cooked turkey. And so forth. So anyway, just to save a little time and compress, it's why I went through 2 devices today. So now you know. Cody, get me out of this.
You know, I was racking my brain about a food you can make in 40 seconds. Egg bites. Egg bites you can microwave in 40 seconds.
Oh.
So, yep, you can make yourself some egg bites while it auto calibrates. But I guess we're all getting hungry because it's getting into the afternoon here. So let's go ahead and move on to some of the connectivity features we intended to discuss.
Peak ID is the new, takes, let's see, I forget what we used to call it in a SAM, on the SAM 940, it was the analyzer software. You would have to use a compact flash to get from the SAM to the PC to analyze. With the Peak ID and PC pairing, as long as your laptop or your device is on a network and your SAM 940 Plus is on the same network, you can link the 2 together and download the events onto a PC analyzer software. A neat feature, I'm using my desktop here, which is not Wi-Fi, and that's why I'm not linking this 2 together. But another cool feature is on the main screen of the Peak ID, you can actually connect the two together, perform the pairing, get them talking to each other, and then from the laptop, from the keyboard of the laptop, you can begin an acquisition. You can increase, decrease, do all of the things that you can do with acquisition, and store that in the PC. You can actually use the SAM's detector and operate and capture live. This is also helpful for users that are performing lab work, and particularly if it's in a remote location. I'm going to put the SAM 940 over here while I open up the lead shield. And when I'm over here in a safe area, I can remotely open the lead shield. I can capture and spectrum and so forth. And I'm done. And it's all operable from Peak ID. So from there, you can load the event log. The event log is, of course, sequentially all of the captures that you've performed that day. You can perform the same. You can open up a event, and you can add camera at that point and connect, associate it, sync it with the event. You can perform background reach back. That's the word. You can perform reach back and rad responder also. So you can do it live. You can do it from the event log later. And I believe you can also do it from Peak ID. I may be wrong, but this is the interface. It's also a device that the Peak ID helps you also program a lot of the detailed settings and that administrative settings and so forth, and then transfer those settings to the SAM 940 Plus to eliminate all the complicated menu-driven items that used to be performed on the SAM 940. That is Peak ID. That is PC pairing. Let me see what else we've got on that screen there. Wi-Fi, yes. Once it's paired, manual ID, event analysis. Hey, look at that. I hit them all.
Indeed, you did. I think that's a perfect coverage of the PC options. Definitely a fast, expedient way to get access to all of the ways you need to adjust the SAM 940 Plus to work for your application in your field. And hey, kind of odd to start asking for names now, but what field are all of you actually in right now? Poll should pop up in a moment. And
you mean like a cornfield or a wheat field or
I hope there's no
outfield?
radiation in a cornfield.
Okay.
That'd be tragic. All
We don't
those
know.
shucks lost.
We don't know what field you're in, people, but
And there are broad categories, so please feel free to just choose the one that fits the most. If we named every single one, definitely require a scroll wheel to get through all of them. So
yes, people find some unique, and I don't have all of the anecdotal stories, but it's a very versatile and flexible. You may find new uses for it that we haven't.
yeah. So we'll go ahead and give it a bit more time here as the answers start to develop.
You know,
Go ahead,
I'm
Mark.
just going to say, Cody, I think the next time we do this, one of the first things I should probably do is get a chair that doesn't swivel. I'll have to seat me in a chair that's just stationary, because if I'm left to yammering and letting my mind wander, do this constant twisting back and forth. I hope it hasn't been distracting the viewers.
Not at all, and we will make sure to get you the non-swivel chair because, as we both know at BNC,
Duct tape me to it.
Ergonomics is first and center. The ergonomics of a chair, the ergonomics of the unit. We're always focused on these things, regardless of application and field. And speaking of that, let's go ahead and look at the breakdown here. All right.
Yeah, curious to know.
Looks like our lion's share here is businesses. Then following that up is first responders, definitely within expectations there. A lot of focus on the response. Then we have academia. Then we have medical. And then we have one military, one person from the military field here.
Oh, thank you for your service.
Thank you. Yeah. But definitely, there's a disparity between each number in terms of percentages. 11 were in business, but I think it goes to show that this unit is going to touch a lot of different fields. And if it was a bigger breakdown and if there is a bigger sample size, it only gets bigger and bigger. But actually, Mark, you can go ahead and discuss some of these applications in detail here on this next slide.
I absolutely will. I have to admit, though, if it just says business, my curiosity is, well, really, what business are you in? But of course, I should mind my own business. Homeland security is certainly one of the key applications that we use. This can be used in borders, or checkpoints. This can be used examining cargo crates that are coming in and out. This can go to sites, and not just nefarious reasons, but also, for instance, just making sure that areas are free of radiation before occupying these areas. So safety, and safety is probably just as important as our a big part of our security, homeland security. Emergency response. Yeah, we had a few. There's a few of you out there that are using these for emergency response. I have the opportunity to perform a lot of training sessions for the emergency responders. Thank you all for your service as well. It's always a good bunch of people. Safeguard and nuclear security. If you happen to be near a nuclear power plant, if you worked at a nuclear power plant, perhaps if you're in an office, hospital, and you've got radiopharmaceuticals or you have access to other radiation, it might be good if you're to perform checks and monitors from time to time to find out if there are leaks. If there is, what is leaking, and be able to respond to that quickly and regularly. So health physics and radiation safety officers are also very popular, common users for the SAM 940 Plus. Radiological area mapping, you can do that inside of a building, you can do that outside, where go ahead and follow a benchmark. You can set this up also for a sequential. I may be speaking out of term. That may be only with the SAM 950s, but I will double check. Sequential mode, where you can pre-program, you're going to be walking a grid, move to this point, take a short automatic measurement. You've got like maybe 1 or 2 seconds, move to the next spot. It'll automatically begin the next one, give you that 2 seconds again, and take this data and use this for mapping purposes, grid purposes. You can do the same thing outdoors as well. So for geological radiation surveying, you can check for normally occurring radioactivity. If you are cleaning up a facility that used to produce radioactive material or regularly used radioactive materials, then this is also a good one. Form that same sort of grid pattern. And you cover a very large area. The background can be set to a variable background where it realizes you may be changing a little bit the background in your area, and it can adjust for that. Where I was going with the variable background. I had a key there, but completely forgot it. When you get to my age, it's quite common. What else we got there? That's about pretty much it. Those are the applications, most common applications that I can think of. Cody, any opportunities to mention a use or a function that I forgot?
I mean, there's definitely a lot to mention. I mean, there's anything from what you've been describing to, as Charles here mentions, drunk drivers in cornfields running over density gauges and being able to identify and say, oh, okay, somebody got a little bit too frisky with the cores and accidentally ran over something important. But I mean, we're kind of approaching the end of the description of the unit here, its functions, what it's capable of, what kind of informed a lot of the design decisions. Before we get into a quick thank you here, just as a small side note, the sequential feature for the SAM 940 Plus can be found on the Peek About software on the PC.
Yes, and then transferred via Wi-Fi pairing into the SAM 940.
And yeah, as my last remark, kind of bouncing off that, when you get to these rids that are so robust already ruggedized, finding new ways to improve them is like adding a new letter to the alphabet. But we definitely owe it to the attendees in this webinar, your applications, the way you use and engage with these units and provide feedback to kind of keep pushing these units in the direction of having these sequential features and being able to provide extra conveniences like acknowledgements.
Keep them coming. We encourage you to keep coming up with features and ways that we can make our products better. Thank you.
Yeah. And I'm about to get into how we're trying to give back in our digital education offerings. But Mark, do you have any last remarks on the unit or in general?
There's probably a lot of things that I've forgotten to mention. Check us out online for the full data sheets and capabilities of the SAM 940 Plus. If you would like to speak with me directly, give us a call. Also, get me at mark.slattery@berkeleynucleonics.com. I would say probably many of you out there already have my contact information. I hope so. So if you have questions and we aren't able to get them into the chat mode, please send us these questions and we'll get you answers as soon as we can.
Awesome. Perfect. And yeah, transitioning here into BNCA. When COVID-19 hit, one of the biggest hits was, of course, to on-site visits and on-site trainings. Berkeley Nucleonics suddenly found that the thing that we prided ourselves on, the interaction with end users and the ability to help onboard their new users via these trainings, had been hampered. So we had to make a decision of whether or not we're going to shrug or if we're going to make a huge push online to kind of digitize what we're able to offer. So now through Berkeley Nucleonics Academy, completely for free, if you register at the link there at the bottom, you can access training for our SAM 940 RID, our SAM 950 RID. And as Alan mentioned earlier in this chat, you'll be able to access the SAM 940 Plus course. We also have recordings like these hosted on our YouTube channel that will be covering topics like the 950 training in detail, the 940 plus training in detail. And of course, if you always want to expand outwards and understand more about the fundamentals of radiation, perhaps about the scintillation detectors that are housed inside of these awesome units, then we also have courses there. And I am the BNCA administrator. So if there is a price course online that you want to, show interest in, then definitely reach out to me. I'm c.cole, C-O-L-E, at berkeleynucleonics.com. And I would definitely be happy to figure something out, in gratitude for your attending and following all the way through on this webinar. Anything about the courses here to add, Mark?
No, they contain a lot more information than I can certainly retain in my head. So when you're finished playing Stump the Chump and you want the facts, check out the courses in BNC Academy.
Yeah. And you know what? Stump the Trump sounds like an excellent idea. Let's go ahead and get into the questions and answers section. So this is your opportunity. And of course, there's a lot of questions already posted that I'll be trying to get through. And then we will be taking on new questions as they come. One thing that might happen is there might be a question that requires an email conversation that can't be answered here. And you can either reach out to info@berkeleynucleonics.com, or you can reach out to one of the emails Mark and I mentioned and that we'll leave in the chat. But let's go ahead and begin. You ready, Mark?
Oh, sure. I feel like Karnak, okay. But go ahead. I have not had a chance to catch up and keep current. Let's see. Thomas Bradley was asking, is the software and transmission of data secure from alterations? I don't know what is mean from secure, or what kind of alterations you might be referring to. That's probably an answer where if you can provide us with more.
Mark, that one was covered.
Is that covered?
Yeah.
Someone's already taken care of that? Okay.
Yeah, so Jordan answered yes. And to go into a bit more detail, we have tested against various software standards to, be able to say that we're able to transmit data safely without any potential alterations.
The reachback is encrypted.
Yeah.
That's always a good thing to know.
And to kind of point you into our Q&A section here, I actually have a question from Mr. Fellinger, who wants to know about the potential neutron detector options for the SAM 940 Plus. Would you be able to list those out for us, Mark?
I'm sorry, run that. What was the question again?
If a user wants neutron detection in their unit, what are some of the options they have available through the SAM 940 Plus?
Well, let's see. We crammed an awful lot in here, so I am not 100% certain that we would still be able to include a small solid state, for instance, domino type lithium substrate for the 2x2s, the sodium iodide detectors. What I would recommend highly is maybe if you think it's going to be critical, it's something that you would want to take care of when you're ordering the SAM. And that's why you would want to consider ordering it with the click detector installed or the CLLBC detector installed. It is the same scintillator that's measuring the gamma. You are the what we're going to call the moderator of neutrons, slowing them down. We use pulse shape discrimination as part of the standard algorithm for separating the difference between gamma counts, neutron counts, identifying one from the other. So if you own one, it's difficult to turn it into something else. I hope that answers it. Bottom line is, if you think you're going to need it and it might be critical, get it at the beginning. Let us know.
Awesome. Yeah. And just to add on a little bit, I'd have to confirm, I believe we do have a sodium iodide option with a solid state with the domino detectors.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure that there was still enough room left in there. We pack an awful lot into this small package. So yes, for all of these, neutron option is available, but it's best to have it installed as part of the system right from the get-go.
Yeah, and to kind of jump from that to over here, Charles Adams is wondering if there is a way to get the uncorrected counts per second displayed on the screen.
Uncorrected counts per second. Are you referring to counts that have been subtracted from the background counts? Not sure if that is what the corrected counts. I don't think we can do that in real time. What you are seeing on that screen is the actual counts, the total actual accounts that the device is reading at that time. It's an interesting feature, though. If there was some way that we can, during this, what I call the 1 second time slices, If we can get an idea of how many counts per second are above what we're typically seeing as say, the average counts per second as recorded in the reference background, that would be. I'll leave that to people with finer minds than my own, but I think that's a good challenge. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah. And then just to get to another question here from Mr. Adams. I can actually go ahead and say that, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, Peak ID can transmit to RAD Responder.
Yes.
Yes, you can do it from the PC software. There's a lot of different and complex and really cool features in the Peak ID software. It's kind of like the backrooms to the unit. I can definitely get a manual for that Peak ID out to you so you can see what are the various options you have available.
Peak ID also allows you to print the spectrum and a lot of the key information, create them as like a PDF document. And if some people don't have the capability or they just want to see a hard copy of that, the print feature of Peak ID is very helpful.
Yep. And to move on here, Jill Slabowski is asking for a comparison between. Yeah, yeah. First of all, hello, Jill. And then, what are the differences between the 940 Plus and the 950? What are the pros and cons between these two units?
For me, if I'm comfortable with using the touch screen and the layout of the buttons on a 950, it may be a little more difficult to get comfortable with the new 940 Plus. Now, by request, we've removed the touch screen because a great many users may be operating with gloves or other perhaps protective equipment, and they're unable to use the touch screen. And so we've got, and for space sake, look at the menu that's available on the bottom banner, and corresponding soft key will take you to that event. So that's one, I think, there's just a greater flexibility in the ability to use the SAM 950. It's smaller and lighter than the SAM 950. Otherwise, the performance, the algorithms for identifying the ability. Well, let's see. Boy, there's probably a bunch of things. I'm surprised that if you keep looking, I'm sure that Jordan, Alan, Cody may be able to pop some stuff there in the chat answers. These are the ones that come to mind.
Yeah. I guess I can pop in and hopefully I'm not treading on the answer you already gave, but the SAM 950 and 940 Plus have a core difference in the architecture of software that they're using. The SAM 950, when you look at that unit online, or if you have one, you'll notice that it very much is a smartphone embedded into a display box, while the 940 Plus is much more inlaid. And so there's going to be a lot of differences there between whether or not you want that phone-like display or if you want a unit with its own standalone user interface. Like, for example, there might be response teams or individuals who prefer the phone style because a phone is something that a lot of people have already acclimated to in terms of the user flow, especially with things like connecting to Wi-Fi. Mm-hmm. But I think in the long run, the 940 Plus is going to be very beneficial in the able to have all of the operations constrained within a single quote unquote application. And in the long run, when you're onboarding users, that will be much more efficient than what the SAM 950 has. So there's definitely a lot of conversation to be had there.
Let's see. The menu settings, SAM 950, all your menu settings are there. But that's a good thing, or maybe that's a bad thing. If some people know how to get into the administrative stuff, and maybe they start messing with settings that they shouldn't be messing with, a lot of that stuff is a good deal more secure on the SAM 940 Plus.
Yes. And kind of using this to seg into another question from Mr. Adams. The SAM 950 as a smartphone architecture is using the GPS that you would find in your phone when you're trying to get directions to, a local area. It has the same GPS. That GPS is able to return coordinates and add that and append that to the report files that you send and transmit.
Yeah, it's 940 Plus.
To get into the question, Mark, do you know what the 940 Plus is using specifically for its own GPS transmission? Because it would have to have something a little more standalone in that case.
Yeah, it's a solid state. I don't have enough to speak knowledgeably of it without consulting a good deal of detailed specification test sheets and so forth. I just kind of have to apologize. I cover such a breadth of material that I'm unable sometimes to get down into the finer details of that type of information. But also wanted to point out, you brought up a good point. You reminded me, Chuck, Charles, that the USB port can also be used for connecting an external GPS. This was something that was also available with the 940. Some people were using like Trimble or much higher resolution GPS detectors, preferred using those. And so if you still are using another type that you prefer, you can connect your GPS via that USB connector as well.
Yeah, that's a very succinct way to put it. The 940 Plus standalone confirmably is able to transmit GPS data on its own, but there is the opportunity for external connections to use a different method, as Mark mentioned.
And the latitude, longitude is included on the report, on the event log.
Yep. And then here's a quick one from Kevin Stewart. How long can the unit operate on a full charge?
Full charge battery, and again, that's one of the reasons why we created the sleep mode there. The display often is the thing that chews up the most voltage. And so with the sleep mode and allowing that with the default, say 3 minutes, goes to sleep kind of with not use. I would say about 3 to 4 hours, depending upon how much you are using the SAM. 3 to 4 hours, the battery is going to start getting low. When you start seeing the percentage getting into the low range, please monitor that. Don't. I'm not going to say ignore, but don't let it power down unprepared, or don't open or let the battery fall out while it's operating. In those situations, we don't know if there's a write or a read going on in the microprocessors, and sometimes files get corrupted. So always, whenever possible, and I'll show you here since I can, power down the SAM manually, red button, hold that, and it should change down here now. This soft button here, it says shutdown, and that's how you correctly do it. This gives the SAM just enough time to save the information, store it where it should be, and make sure that the data is safe and secure. You have two battery packs in each, in your Pelican case. It comes with two battery packs. So you could be out certainly working the day with 8 hours for a full day work. If you got to work 12 hours, well, that's when that little plastic device comes in. You can put AA's in there, either alkaline, rechargeable, nickel metal hydride, things like that. So I hope that's answered the question. That's how long it'll operate on a full charge. Again,
Sorry. You know, I mean, with powering off the unit, I think that's a good metaphor for the fact that, congratulations, Mark. I think Stump the Trump period is coming to an end here. We've reached a pretty good webinar time. We do have 2 more questions,
sure.
and I think I can go ahead and get Jill's question here. Yes, if you attach an external detector, it will feed into the software, and you'll be able to read out information being obtained from that external detector, so long as it's one that we've properly prepared the integration for. And then, Mark, do you know if you can use the USB port power supply to provide some time to swap out the handle battery without powering down?
To be honest, I tried experimenting with that today. But I don't have an external battery pack, and I don't have an example, a larger. We have one for the SAM 950 that contains several batteries inside and a USB or a circular switchcraft connector. So you can extend the operation of the SAM 950. What I was trying to do today, and I just don't have the equipment to do it, but I tried to put a battery into a charging stand, run a USB cable to a USB to go cable, and attach it to the front of the device. And I did, in fact, see the battery icon indicate that yes, it's charging. When I tried to remove the battery, it did power down. And so let me check into that, if that is something that we can do for all the models, or it may not happen if I'm using a different type of source. Again, this in a charging station is not the same thing as using a prepared battery pack that we could provide.
Yep. And I think that feeds into the fact that this is just the beginning of the information we plan to cover on the unit. And there's probably a lot of questions and a lot of curiosities we couldn't address, but hopefully this is a nice overview, and we're very thankful for everybody who attended and made it all the way through. Mark, do you have anything to leave off with?
If you're still awake, chat yes. If you've fallen asleep, chat no. No, thank you very much. I've seen some familiar names over in the chat area, and I don't get to see you, but hey, you kind of now have an idea of what it's like to have to listen to Mark for an extended period.
And I think it is one of the most graciously awesome opportunities one can get on a Thursday afternoon. But with that, we are going to smile and stare into our cameras until the webinar shuts down. A recording of this will be made available on our YouTube channel once it's been processed and edited. Thank you again for the millionth time.
Thank you, everybody.
Hope to be speaking more about this unit in the future and offering trainings as well. All right, ready to stare, Mark?
Yes, just like they do on TV.
All right.